There is no doubt that Saskatchewan people have been, and continue to be, strongly influenced by our climate. It's an often repeated cliché that we have 9 months of winter and 3 months of tough sledding. Those who have traveled only the great flat prairie expanse along the southern Trans-Canada Highway think of Saskatchewan as that long, straight stretch of road, the gap that must be endured to get from Manitoba to the mountains of Alberta. Yet Saskatchewan is a land of great beauty in all 4 seasons. It is also a land of great contrasts. It's often a surprise to learn that just a few hundred kilometers north of the prairie are forested hills, sparkling crystal clear lakes, and pristine waterfalls. Tumbling over the lip of a granite ridge, the water at Nestoyac Falls plunges into the gorge below, where it joins the Churchill River. Flowing north and east, it will eventually make its way into the frigid waters of Hudson Bay. It is a changing climate from one month to the next, where every season offers something to be enjoyed. Hot summers with Celsius temperatures in the mid-30s, crisp autumns where crops turn golden and harvest is completed. Frigid winters that plunge to 40 below, warm springs where newly blossoming flowers signal the start of another year. Another year to hope, to plan, to dream. By late June, summer is in full bloom in Saskatchewan. To see the prairie in summer, you must not look only at its majestic openness with vast horizons and the ever-present living sky, but also look close up at the plant and animal life that is adapted to this hot and semi-arid climate. Wildflowers blossom in abundance in uncultivated areas. Gaillardia, prairie rose, coneflower, sunflower, scarlet mallow, beard tongue, purple prairie clover. A testament to the fertile soil that lies beneath the prairie grasses. It was that unbroken sod that drew immigrants from across Central Europe to make a new home in this abundant land. Laid open by the plow, grassland turned to grain, fields of wheat stretching to the distant horizon, a tabletop of land that served up its produce to the tables of humanity, as Saskatchewan became breadbasket of the world. Today in July, you are as likely to see other crops in bloom, like peas, canola, or flax, for agriculture remains one of Saskatchewan's most important export industries, second only to oil and gas. The Saskatchewan landscape is a reminder of the last ice age. On a hot summer's day, with the temperature in the mid-30s and in the semi-arid part of Saskatchewan near the South Saskatchewan River, it may be hard to imagine a time when ice covered this land several hundred meters thick. Though many think of Saskatchewan as flat, the south is mostly hills and rolling plains, the remains of glacial till left as the ice sheets retreated 15,000 years ago. Its deep valleys, the Saskatchewan, the Qu'Appelle, were carved by great rivers as the ice melted. Today, the rivers that remain are small compared to the valleys that were left behind. Near Sceptre, just south of the South Saskatchewan River, fine sand left behind by a glacial lake now forms the Great Sand Hills. They move relentlessly, blown by the prevailing westerly winds. With less than 30 centimeters of rain and summer midday temperatures commonly over 30 degrees Celsius, it is difficult for plants to gain a foothold to stabilize the soil. Large boulders, glacial erratics left by the retreating ice sheets, became buffalo rubs. Deep furrows were plowed into the ground around the stones as the bison rubbed and scratched to free themselves from their dense winter wool. Deer and pronghorn antelope still run wild over the rangeland of the southwest. The pronghorn is the fastest animal in the Western Hemisphere, capable of running long distances at up to 100 kilometers per hour. It prefers wide-open ranges, where it can see long distances and use its speed to escape any predators, except man. Before the West was settled, there were millions of pronghorn across North America, second only to the bison. Mule deer are fairly common throughout southern Saskatchewan. They prefer habitat that is open grassland mixed with shrubs. In mid-July, these two bucks were still in velvet. By October, during the rut, they will doubtless not be so friendly towards each other. Bison, however, no longer roam free. Though they do exist on a few farms and preserves, there are few compared to the vast herds that once stretched to the horizon across the prairie plain. Much of the grassland that was once their range is now pastures for herds of livestock, or is harvested for hay. Only the top of the Cypress Hills in the southwest remained untouched by the glacial ice. Rising over 400 meters above the surrounding plain, sediments that formed the bed of an ancient sea are now exposed as cliffs of concrete-like conglomerate rock. The hills, treed with aspen, lodgepole pine, and other evergreens, shelter the remains of Fort Walsh, one of the original homes of Canada's Mounted Police. The reconstructed fort and whiskey traders' sites remind us of the days when the West was much more wild. The Gap Road is a prairie trail, not much different than the rutted ox cart tracks of the whiskey trading days, and travel is advised only when it is dry. The trail exposes the cobblestones of this conglomerate formation as it connects the western and center blocks of the Cypress Hills Park. From the tops of the flat plateau, it's possible to see as far as 100 kilometers out onto the northern plain. From the same viewpoint in the evening, watch the sun set below the distant horizon as it turns the sky to reds and gold. Travel east along the hills of the Frenchman River Valley, through scattered small towns like East End, home of Scotty, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Small towns were once the norm, each just a few miles apart, scattered along the railroad at distances a horse could travel and return in a day. Now prairie towns are far between, and use innovative ways to survive. Historical sites that once were busy one-room schools, and empty churches that once were the heart of vibrant communities are often all that is left. Farms are larger, villages are gone, and small towns try to carve out a niche, no longer as supply centers, but often as retirement communities for an aging farm population. Today, less than 25% of the original prairie remains as it was 100 years ago. One of the most modified ecosystems on Earth, little but precious pockets of the short grass prairie are preserved in a few locations like Grasslands National Park near Val-Marie, usually in locations that are too rugged or too dry to farm. When rainfall is abundant in July, the hills and coulees of the Frenchman River Valley are green with native grasses. Undisturbed teepee rings show this is a landscape that has been little modified by man, a grass island bordered by agricultural activity. Always on guard, Canada's only colonies of black-tailed prairie dogs signal each other with a variety of barks and whistles. Overhead a hawk soars, ever watchful for a possible meal. Take a hike on a hot summer day through the smaller east block of Grasslands Park.
Really nice.
The park is home to the Killdeer Badlands with their red buttes, formed when prairie fires ignited the lignite coal and baked the iron in the soil into red iron oxide. Nearby, the St. Victor petroglyphs high on a sandstone rock are an intriguing puzzle. Who were the First Nations peoples that carved these stone images? Almost 700 kilometers north, but still barely into the northern half of the province, rock paintings on the shores of the Churchill River are another mystery. Though newer than the St. Victor rock carvings, they too tell the story of a time that has disappeared. Expanding their trading empires in search of the Canadian beaver, the Northwest and Hudson's Bay companies pushed rapidly into the north, establishing major trade routes along rivers like the Churchill. The Voyageurs Highway, the Churchill is a series of beautiful lakes, connected by rapids and falls. Missionaries followed after the fur trade was over, and the oldest church west of Manitoba is Holy Trinity Anglican Church at Stanley Mission. Still in use today, its lumber was sawn from local trees, but its stained glass windows were brought upstream from England, rowed by York boat crews. Today, canoeists follow that same route, for northern Saskatchewan is still wild. Fish-eating birds like bald eagles and pelicans suggest that these waters provide excellent fishing. Pelicans are communal birds that work together, herding fish by swimming in groups, taking off in unison, landing in unison, and even waggling their tails in unison. It's not just the birds that enjoy the fishing. Large walleye and pike lurk in these waters. Saskatchewan is renowned for its big fish that are great fun to catch, but they should be released after they have been caught. Smaller fish, though, make great eating. Little tastes better than fresh fish fried over an open fire, just moments after it was taken from the water. The lakes and rivers of northern Saskatchewan are some of the world's best canoe tripping waters. The modern canoeist doesn't have to put in 18-hour-long paddling days of the voyageur. Take time to relax and enjoy the beauty of the wild, like these rare pink lady's slipper orchids. A wilderness canoe trip can provide the peaceful relaxation of paddling through clean, clear lakes, watching the wildlife and the flowers. or it can mean the excitement of running the rapids that join these lakes together. White water tumbles through the gap left by the glaciers as they carved out depressions in the granite of the Canadian Shield. Wind can quickly make the larger lakes unnavigable by canoe, for wind is a common feature of the Saskatchewan climate, both north and south. However, wind can also provide a useful and clean source of energy. As concerns about climate change caused by combustion of fossil fuels increase, wind energy becomes a more and more cost-effective and certainly more environmentally friendly alternative. At Sask Power's Cypress Wind Power Facility near Gull Lake, the wind blows an average 40% of the time, making this one of the most reliable sources of wind energy in Canada. The towers are massive, much larger up close than they appear from the highway. 50-meter high towers are topped by turbine blades half that length, a rotor diameter approximately half the length of a football field. The towers are not accessible to the general public, as they are located on private land. Farming can continue right up to the base of the tower, an additional benefit of this green energy source. As well, environmental studies have shown that these towers pose little danger to birds, as they are located far away from any major flyways. An important consideration, for in summer Saskatchewan is nesting grounds for a large variety of bird life. Prairie sloughs become home to many different kinds of waterfowl. Summer, though, is not long, and soon they will test their wings and be gone. By late August, the 16-hour days of summer have grown shorter. Fall is approaching. Flowers of summer give way to the flowers of fall. The crops that were blossoming just a month ago are now beginning to ripen and turn to fields of gold. Soon the flashing sickle of the swather will cut down the stands of grain so that they can ripen more quickly for harvest. Evening now comes soon, though work will go on into the night under the light of a harvest moon. The first weeks of September are likely to bring a killing frost. Then the leaves that erupted bright green just weeks ago turn to yellows and red. Morning dew hangs heavy in the cool fall air. Geese, huge flocks of Canada and snows, cover the sky with their V's as they take off in the early morning, after a night's rest on their long journey south. Cool nights but warm days make fall a pleasant time to spend in the outdoor splendor. The air of the northern forest becomes thick with the pungent aroma of cranberry, bright red berries hanging in clusters against red, frost-touched leaves. The hills of the northern river valleys contrast the now colored leaves of deciduous trees against the dark greens of spruce. Aspen glow gold against the blue sky. Gooseberry has turned to bright red. A bull elk aggressively defends his harem. His cows amble off nonchalantly, while he tosses moss and grass into the air, a warning to an invading aggressor. Sniffing the air, he decides his warning has been enough and turns to walk away. His broad back shows the scars of previous encounters with other bulls. For now, he is satisfied that this human intruder in his domain is no threat. The shores of a northern lake reflect the ever-present sky, bright blue in contrast to the bright color of the fall foliage. All is not so peaceful everywhere. On Saskatchewan farms, fall is a time of feverish pace. Crops are ready and must be harvested. Grain that has now ripened is sheared off by the mighty jaws of the combine. A far cry from the massive labor effort of harvest required just a half a century ago. One man today can thresh a quarter section of land in just a few hours. Huge machinery, combines so large that they make a semi-trailer seem small, can get the grain off the land quickly. 1,000-bushel trucks can rapidly move the grain from the field in just a few loads. Nature, though, controls the harvest. Weather must remain dry. Days grow short and temperatures are low, so that even a light morning dew can delay the harvest until well after mid-morning. Though large machines and mechanization have increased the size of farms and cut the time required to harvest the crop, they have not reduced the anxiety of autumn on the farm. There is a sense of heightened tension, of desire to see the crop cleared and transported from the field. Even when combining is completed, there is still much work remaining to be finished. Every farm family member works together to complete the harvest. Barley straw is baled and picked up from the field. It will be bedding and feed for the cattle throughout the rapidly approaching long dark nights of winter. There is no time to waste. The first snow can come at any time, abruptly halting fall's frantic pace. Harvest must be done in these few short days of autumn before snow comes and brings work to a standstill. And so October ends. It's not unusual to have snow on the ground by Halloween, but a little snow and chilly weather won't stop children from dressing up to collect their supply of candy.
What do you want? Candy? I don't have any candy. My candy bowl is empty. You want garlic?
Animals also take every last opportunity to store up foods for a long cold winter ahead. Beaver busily build their stockpile of bark-covered trees. Stored underwater, below the ice that will soon cover the stream, willows and aspen will be stripped of their bark in the months ahead. It will be almost 6 months before new growth will be available. Now, just before freeze-up, it's a last opportunity to prepare the den that will be a winter home and birthplace for several new beaver kittens. Grasses will form a warm bed in the underground den, and a huge pantry of branches will provide winter meals. Squirrels too prepare for winter. They store pine cones in large underground middens, refrigerators that they will be able to raid during the months ahead. Birds that have come south, like these cedar waxwings, take the last opportunity to seek out dried berries amongst the leaves before they become snow-covered for the winter. Humans too must prepare. Throughout the summer and fall, ferries were busy transporting farm machinery across the North and South Saskatchewan rivers. Now, as winter approaches, pack ice forms and drifts downstream with the flowing river. The ferries must be pulled from the icy water to sit dormant on shore until spring. Only the flowing water of the Saskatchewan rivers, north and south, keep them from freezing solid through late November. The prairie sloughs that were teeming with bird life during the summer are already ice-covered. Until snow comes to stay, they make huge skating rinks to enjoy on a crisp fall day. November nights are now long and grow much colder. The full moon reflects from river ice flows, where straggling geese seek shelter for the night. They rest until dawn, using whatever open river water they can find. Soon this water will also be gone, and so will these last geese. The river, once solidly frozen over, will stay ice-covered until April, when it will once more break free. On a January day at minus 48 degrees Celsius, the ice fog hangs in cities so thick that one can barely see across an intersection. Car exhausts and furnace chimneys working overtime pour tons of water vapor into the air, where it instantly freezes into ice crystals. A winter storm leaves snowbanks drifted deep, reflecting the afternoon sky. Meter-tall grasses are barely able to poke their heads above the drifts. Blue shadows suggest the cold that winter brings. But a Saskatchewan winter is more than bitter cold. It's also time to get outside and enjoy a sunny winter's day, perhaps by cross-country skiing on the trails north of Prince Albert. Here, on some of the best cross-country skiing you'll find, you're bound to see a frisky red squirrel enjoying the sun. And, if you are lucky, you may spot a white-tailed deer along the trail. Perhaps you prefer downhill skiing. While we have no mountains, we do have some great places to learn to ski. Though the snowmobile has replaced the dog sled as a working unit, many Saskatchewan residents spend their weekends racing their dog teams. For some, it is serious competition, and long-distance races can involve hundreds of kilometers of travel over several days. For many others, it's just another fun way to enjoy a day outdoors in the Saskatchewan winter. Though most of the trees in the parkland area north of Saskatoon were cleared by early settlers, scattered island pockets of aspen and spruce are still present, especially as one gets farther north. Many of those trees were cleared to make room for farming, and found their way into log buildings. Today, the rural landscape still contains relics of those early days. Log barns and houses stand empty that once sheltered immigrant farmers from the howling winds of cold prairie storms. Abandoned implements tell stories of a different type of agriculture, when the horse, not the tractor, was the source of power. Though winter storms today still lash out with snow and wind as in the past, there is no doubt that today's farms are not very isolated compared to those of 100 years ago. Shortly after any winter storm, the roads in rural areas are cleared and travel can resume. One cannot deny that even in the cold and snow of winter, there is a beauty to be found in the Saskatchewan landscape. Hoarfrost hangs thick on the branches of trees. Its fragile beauty gleams bright white against the deep blue sky. Branches and seeds embedded in crystals of frost sparkle as each one catches sunlight in a different way. Their beauty is fleeting, for by mid-morning the warming air and the slightest wind will break free the delicate frost and scatter it across the ground. Snow may cover the ground, but always overhead is the all-pervasive sky. In winter, as in summer, it dominates the Saskatchewan landscape. The sky may generally be a brilliant blue, but even on a cloudy day, the sun, always low on the horizon, imparts glowing colors. Winter days are short. As the sun drops below the horizon at 4 p.m., it can depart with a spectacular sunset. The golden glow of evening becomes a sky on fire, crimson reflecting from the clouds as the sun sinks lower into the sky, then disappears into the dark of night. If the nights are long, then lighted ski hills and hockey rinks on which a girls' hockey team can enjoy a game of shinny make long nights seem shorter. A crescent moon and Venus bright against the starry sky, or lights that dance across the north, make even the dark of winter's night time to be outdoors. Curtains of wavering light glow sinuously as they move across the star-studded sky. Clear nights may be the coldest, but they also create the chance to catch the aurora in all their magnificence. When morning comes, the golden light of dawn highlights cattails in a snow-covered and frozen slough. Winter will not last much longer. Soon this wetland, which now only sports the tracks of coyote-chased rabbits, will host ducks and other water birds. Now still and silent, in just over a month, it will become a noisy chorus of croaking frogs, raucous red-winged blackbirds, and quacking ducks. Winter cannot keep us in its grip for long. Soon March will come, and with it temperatures that turn a winter's accumulation of snow into a puddle that was just meant to play in. Calves that were born indoors in the cold of January winters are now outside. Though there is still snow from a late winter storm, warmer weather means calves can frolic outdoors. Spring, with all its signs of new life, is on its way. Soon winter's snows are melting and pour into streams that have been ice-covered all winter. In just a few short days, the winter's snow is almost gone. Pussy willows, the first real new growth of spring, begin to show their furry buds, while overhead sandhill cranes call out as they fly north. Unlike the smaller rivers which now run ice-free, the North Saskatchewan is still ice-covered in early April. But the ice is rotten and along the river's edge, open water now hosts some early migrant geese. Already the ice has started to break up in some fast-flowing stretches. Small floes break loose and float downstream, but it will still be several days before the entire river becomes ice-free. Sloughs, no longer icebound, become rest stops for flocks of returning migrant geese and ducks. Some of them will stay to nest, while others will continue on. Large flocks of snow geese stop to spend the night on their journey north, then in the early morning are off again as they travel toward their Arctic nesting grounds. Not all birds are migratory visitors, of course. The western meadowlark's song signals to his rivals that this territory is occupied. Several females will fall under the spell of his voice, and nesting will soon begin. Cute perhaps, but serious pests that can destroy acres of crops come summer. Richardson's ground squirrels, prairie gophers, enjoy the spring sun while remaining ever alert. With green grass still scarce in early April, they must content themselves with the dried seeds and grasses of last year's growth. Always on guard, at the first sign of danger, they sprint for cover. Only small parts of the prairie are still unbroken, often, like this coulee, areas that are too rugged to farm. Here in the spring you can find prairie crocus soon after the snow is gone, and bees become active in gathering pollen. Moss phlox blooms where the melting snow has dampened the soil. Later, as evening approaches, mule deer come out to search the hillsides of the coulee for green grass. Humans are also active in the spring. With calving almost done, there is now time to make necessary repairs. Soon spring seeding will occupy the time, but now the daily routine of maintaining a farm goes on. In town, it's time for a family to get out their bicycles and go for a ride, even if it is still cool outdoors. There is no doubt that springtime can be windy. These winds can fan the flames that sweep through dry grasses and bush. The windy days of spring are also a great opportunity for an older brother to teach his sister to go fly a kite. Rivers now are totally ice-free, so it's time to once again go canoeing. Though trees that line the banks are still leafless, they have begun to bud. Ferries too are back in full operation, making routes to cross the rivers much shorter than driving many kilometers to the nearest bridge. They will remain busy throughout the summer as farmers use them to transport machinery. Early May is one of the most pleasant times to spend in the bush, for there are still no biting insects. A ruffed grouse cock sits on his drumming log, listening for the sound of an approaching mate. His beating wings slap the air. The forest reverberates as he warns other males that this is his territory, and hopes a hen will hear his call and come to mate. Springtime is also the season that can pass slowly in anticipation. One waits for trees to bud, to signal the arrival of warmer weather. One waits for the land to warm, until it is warm enough to seed the next year's crop. Though mechanized farming has increased tremendously the amount of land that one person can farm, it has not diminished in any way the fickle whims of nature. Today's farmer is as reliant as were his forebears on sun, wind, and rain. Dry, dusty soil needs moisture before the seed that has been planted will be able to germinate. And so one waits, hoping that spring rains will come to moisten the soil and sprout that seed to grow into a bountiful harvest. Springtime is the season of new life and hope. Wildflowers bloom. Trembling aspen break forth with virgin green leaves that shake in the slightest breeze. Male birds like this chipping sparrow sing to mark a territory. A lusty red-winged blackbird defends his spot in the marsh as his alone. More than just staking a claim to this territory, he also sings, hoping to attract a mate. Saskatchewan people, too, have always been incredibly optimistic. They have had to be, for often next year was all they had to cling to. Springtime is the peak of that optimism, as the early growth of spring holds promise of fruit to be born later in the summer. Expectantly, waiting for the harvest, the cycle of the seasons is about to begin again.